So soon as early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, in wonder at the island we roamed over the length thereof. And the nymphs, the daughters of Zeus, lord of the Aegis, started the wild goats of the hills, that my company might have therewith to sup. Anon we took to us our curved bows from out the ships, and long spears, and arrayed in 3 bands we began shooting at the goats, and the gods soon gave us game in plenty. Now 12 ships bare me company, and to each ship fell 9 goats for a portion, but for me alone they sent 10 apart. Thus we sat there the livelong day, until the going down of the sun, feasting upon abundant flesh and on sweet wine. For the red wine was not yet spent from our ships, but somewhat was yet therein, for we had each one drawn off a large store thereof in jars, when we took the sacred citadel of the Cyclopes, and we looked across the land of the Cyclopes, who dwell nigh, into the smoke and to the voice of the men, and of the sheep and of the goats. And when the sun had sunk and darkness had come on, then we laid to rest upon the sea beach. So soon as early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, then I called a gathering of my men, and spake among them all. Abide here, all the rest of you, my dear companions. But I will go with mine own ship, and my ship's company, and make proof of these men, what manner of folk they are, whether froward and wild and unjust, or hospitable and of God-fearing mind. Okay, a bit more of Odysseus and his company of men settling in the land of the Cyclopes. Yep, drinking, eating, doing a thing. Sorry, I'm struggling to figure out what to comment on here. I think what is most interesting to me, something I started this book with, but I'll come back to now, which is this idea of Odysseus acknowledging his favoritism in the eyes of the gods over the other men. Particularly his evidence here, all of the goats that are sent to them for game so that they can eat and be merry. It is said that each of the ships in their company, 12 ships, by the way, each of them got 9 goats for all of the men together. But for Odysseus alone, the gods sent 10. So Odysseus gets 10 goats, while the other men have to share 9. I hope Odysseus shared some of his 10 goats. You will not be able to eat that much, nor will it stay as long as you need it to before it rots. So share that shit, Odysseus. But it doesn't say here, and I'm assuming that this is a favor of the gods and not a demonstration of Odysseus' skill, the way the Phaeacians were trying to draw it out of him when they say that, you know, they take their bows from their ships to go hunting and the spears. And Odysseus isn't saying that with his prowess he's able to kill more than the other men. It's just that the way he phrases it, by saying, like, quote, and the gods soon gave us game in plenty, end quote, in that the gods gave the 9 goats for the men and 10 to him. It's matter of fact. I don't feel like he's gloating. I think that's just a character trait that I am looking for with a modern lens and need to kind of set that aside. But acknowledging that, though, I think factors into this idea of responsibility and leadership, because the passage ends today with Odysseus saying, I will be the one with my men to go forward and try to be an ambassador to the people of the Cyclopes. I will go forward and find out if they are dangerous or if they're hospitable, and figure that out before we risk anyone else. I will put myself as leader at the front of the pack, at the front of danger, to figure that out for all of us. So while he's given more, he is also taking on more risk than anyone else. What else do you want to talk about? How's your day going? You reading anything cool? Mm-hmm. I'm reading some Murakami right now. I decided to pick up one of his lesser-known books, Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. And watch me make a connection here. Do some mental gymnastics. I think it's probably not coincidence that someone like Joseph Campbell can look at these, ancient texts and all of the history of storytelling and pick up on these archetypes of story, of character. And I always wonder if, like, that sort of analytical and philosophical work then gives a pathway forward to storytellers thenceforth, or if it is tapping into something larger than, Joseph Campbell, because Murakami's story is weird. I love it, but it has this sort of like mythical quality to it. This unknown voyage. He's not on a voyage, but like this unknown Odyssey, for lack of a better term, that the main character is on. He's in all of these strange situations. It's putting a kind of pulpy detective style character into an Odyssey-like fantasy environment, and him trying to navigate his way through it. Now, the character in Hard-Boiled Wonderland doesn't have a brass ring, to use a Joseph Campbell term, to get back home or to really do anything. If anything, his kind of blasé brass ring is, maybe I'll retire one day in quiet solitude and learn the cello and Greek, learn how to speak Greek. That's about all he wants, which is fine. But, it is driving his character to a certain degree as he finds himself in one situation after another. I think it's probably why the Odyssey is used as a template. And I'm not saying that Murakami used the Odyssey as a template here, but more broadly, why the Odyssey, the type of story the Odyssey is easy to use as a template for other stories. We can talk about, and we haven't yet, James Joyce's Ulysses, the Coen brothers, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Maybe we'll get to all these on the show at some point. But it's so kind of archetypal that you can drape any aesthetic over it that you would like. And it just gives you a formula, an equation for a story to push your character through some sort of transformation. I'll admit, too, that I'm a sucker for stories that have a very simple brass ring, if we want to keep using that term, and that from a very simple premise, you can get very complicated. An obvious example is Lord of the Rings. Frodo basically just needs to get from point A to point B, and yet he himself is waylaid. In fact, I haven't read Lord of the Rings. I know that is a major thing to admit. It's on my list to read this year. I'd be curious if Tolkien is interested in Greek mythology or mythology at all, any kind of mythology, because it does seem like one of those very simple adventure premises. Odysseus just wants to get home. Frodo just wants to get rid of that ring. It's a straight as an arrow character desire. And yet, the straighter you make that, the more complicated you can make that accomplishment be. Well, I just have to go home. Well, by the way the crow flies, you can get there pretty easily. But, with the gods' interference, that's gonna cost you a little bit. You're gonna have to be held prisoner. Again, the Odyssey's term, not mine, on Calypso's island. You're going to have to deal with the Cyclopes on this island. You're going to have to prove yourself in sport amongst the Phaeacians. All of this before you can just achieve the simple goal of arriving home. And I think that develops in the audience a relatability for yearning for something simple. I can't tell you how many times a day where, maybe this isn't an apt analogy at all, but like how many times a day I'm just like trying to log into my computer at work and there are 100,000 pop-ups. It's like all I want to do is turn my computer on and open the spreadsheet I was working on, and yet I try to turn it on, my password doesn't work. I get my password finally correct, and suddenly there's a note from IT saying I need to reboot my computer. I reboot my computer, and everything's back up and running, and then suddenly I get a note from Microsoft saying I have to close down the spreadsheet because I need to update the program. It's just like, all I want to do is open the frickin' spreadsheet and do my work, and yet I get waylaid on this Odyssey-like adventure, which is more frustrating than fun. I would rather fight a Cyclops than Microsoft, I think, is what I'm saying. Anyway, that's enough nonsense for today, don't you think? We're getting silly here. Join me here tomorrow, and hopefully I will have a bit more focus. Until then, okay, goodbye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.